Our top story this morning, tensions between the United States and Saudi Arabia are escalating. In the latest, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says U.S. President Joe Biden has no plans to meet with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman at the G20 summit next month in Indonesia. White House says Joe Biden will act methodically in deciding how to respond to Saudi Arabia over the OPEC Plus output cuts. White House also says the options could include changes to U.S. security assistance a day after OPEC Plus oil producers announced output cuts despite U.S. objections. Now, Joe Biden warned of consequences and said that there would be action on Saudi Arabia for siding with Russia and supporting the cuts. Now, the OPEC Plus move undermines Western countries' plans to impose a cap on the price of Russian oil exports in response to the war in Ukraine. Expressing disappointment at the move, Joe Biden also said that it is time for the United States to rethink its relationship with Saudi Arabia. The United States says that the oil cartel's decision was against the interest of the American people. The Organization of Petrol Exporting Countries, along with Russia, announced that it would cut its oil production by 2 million barrels a day. Riyadh has defended this decision. It says the cut was purely economical. However, it has not just brought U.S.-Saudi ties to a low, but has also worsened fears of a recession. Washington's reaction stems from its situation at home. The production cut could see inflation soaring in the United States just weeks ahead of the midterm elections. America's ties with Saudi Arabia have not been the best under Joe Biden. Remember, he even campaigned on the promise of making Saudi Arabia a pariah state. He said his administration will make Riyadh pay for the assassination of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. But when Biden was elected president, he flew down to Riyadh to offer an olive branch to the Crown Prince. He even did a little fist bump here, an image we've seen repeatedly. And now, 3 months on, another U-turn definitely does not seem too far away. For more on this, we're now being joined by Edward P. Joseph, who's a foreign policy analyst and a senior fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast.
Nice to be with you.
Now, tensions between the United States and Saudi Arabia are escalating, as I mentioned earlier. What can you tell us of the possible scenarios that this could lead to?
Well, the first thing is no one should underestimate the fury in Washington about the Saudi, and we should mention here the Emirati decision as well. It's not just the Saudis, it's the Emiratis also, whose position and relationship and friendship even with Russia have infuriated Washington. And the point here is, while Republicans may be quiet here for now, actually welcoming the potential impact on Democrats in the upcoming midterm elections, no one in Washington, across the political spectrum, is at all confused about the role that the Saudis and the Emiratis are playing here. And this comes against a backdrop of intense suspicion across the political spectrum here in the United States about the Saudi Arabia and about Saudi Arabia's role and the Emirati role in the war in Yemen. The brutal murder of Jamal Khashoggi orchestrated by MBS, and the fact that the Saudis and the Emiratis are proving themselves to be, just like Russia, unreliable suppliers. So, yes, and President Biden is determined, so all indications, he has said this, Jake Sullivan has said this, his national security advisor is determined to take steps to push back against this decision, and that's exactly where it stands now, what President Biden will do, and he does have some options. Please.
All right. Now, when we talk of oil production, how do you assess Riyadh's decision, and to what extent do you think this benefits Russia?
Well, it definitely benefits Russia because it makes it more difficult for the U.S. and the EU, and we should remember here that Saudi Arabia and the Emiratis are alienating the European Union as well. It's not just the United States. In fact, it's the U.S. that is less affected by this decision for OPEC Plus to cut production than it is the EU. And the reason behind this is that the U.S. and EU, this is one of the main reasons, have moved to have a price cap on Russian oil. And this, the intent here, of course, is to stop the windfall gains that Russia gets from the increase in oil prices, which helps sustain this, it's illegal, it's criminal war effort in Ukraine. And of course, the Saudis and Emiratis have the similar interest, as does Russia, to prevent this type of joint action, almost like a buyer's cartel. They don't want that. The Saudis and the Emiratis fear that kind of loss of market power to the buyers. So there's an alignment there of interest, but of course the timing of this could not be worse in terms of alienating the Biden administration itself, coming here just weeks before the midterms and coming after President Biden went to Riyadh in July, had that famous fist bump, and meeting with MBS, in which the two discussed the need to sustain oil production. So it completely undermines the concept of a strategic partnership between the United States and Saudi Arabia. And it, again, inclines Joe Biden to take steps. And again, he will have strong political support in Congress to do this. And he does have options. Please.
All right. Well, Mr. Jose, thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast with your inputs on this.
You're welcome.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.